to your question, the temporal reference is important. I think the last time we were in this room, Special Envoy Feltman was in Ethiopia. He has since left Ethiopia to return. Let me come back to that and unpack that a little bit. Before I do, let me just reiterate that we remain fully engaged in efforts to move all sides towards an immediate cessation of hostilities. All of those in need, regardless of ethnicity, should have immediate access to life-saving humanitarian assistance. We call for an immediate end to human rights abuses and violations being committed against civilians. Our embassy in Addis Ababa remains open under the leadership of our ambassador. Special Envoy Feltman does remain in the region where he is working to further our diplomatic efforts, and we urge all parties to use restraint, to end hostilities, to respect human rights, and to protect civilians on the path towards an immediate cessation of hostilities. Let me make a couple other points before I talk about our diplomacy. As you know, our embassy went to ordered departure recently. We are urging U.S. citizens in Ethiopia to depart the country using commercially available options. We've been saying this for several days now. We understand that commercial options remain available in Addis. The embassy is in a position to help the American citizen community in Ethiopia secure their departure from the country. We understand there is adequate space available, capacity available on these flights. And in the past several days, there have been more than a dozen flights leaving the airport in Addis. We are providing a range of services to the American citizen community in Addis. We are prioritizing that even as we have gone on ordered departure to reduce our footprint from our embassy in Addis. We, importantly, can even provide a repatriation loan for U.S. citizens who cannot afford at this time to purchase a U.S. commercial ticket to the United States. U.S. citizens in Ethiopia who are interested in pursuing these options, and we encourage all of them to do so, should contact the embassy. There's an email address available on the embassy website. We are, as I said, engaged in concerted diplomacy to urge all parties to end the hostilities immediately. We have called on the Ethiopian government and the TPLF and the OLA to enter into negotiations without preconditions towards a sustainable cessation of hostilities, and for Eritrean forces to withdraw immediately and permanently from Ethiopia. Now, when it comes to Ambassador Feltman's activity in the region, he returned to Ethiopia today from Kenya, and I'll come to that, to continue to urgently press the parties to de-escalate the conflict and negotiate, as I said before, a cessation of hostilities. He continues to raise our concern about the risk of intercommunal violence, and that is a concern that we've raised repeatedly with Ethiopian authorities and regional authorities in recent days. But following his meetings on his current trip, we believe there is a small window of opening to work with the AU High Representative for the Horn of Africa, former President Obasanjo, whom he will see again tonight in Addis, where Ambassador Feltman has returned, to further joint efforts to peacefully resolve the conflict in Ethiopia. We are working with international partners to address the crisis in Ethiopia, including through action with the UN, the AU, and other relevant partners and bodies. You all may have seen some of the statements that have emanated from the region in recent days and recent hours. Of course, the UN Security Council, which will hold an open session on Ethiopia today, released a statement, and as Ambassador Thomas Greenfield said, the Council spoke with one voice, calling for an end to the violence and a cessation of hostilities. You may also have seen that President Kenyatta, with whom Ambassador Feltman has met in Nairobi in recent days, issued a similar statement, calling for dialogue and urging a few points. President Kenyatta made many of the same points that we have been making. All hostilities must cease. Political solution is the only solution. There should be no incitement to violence. Instead, we must work to de-escalate tensions and hostilities. He noted the fact that we must address the humanitarian situation with some urgency, and the parties to the conflict must allow humanitarian access, which has been restricted for many of those in need for far too long. And of course, the imperative of respecting human rights for all and by all. And so the actors, the forces in Ethiopia have heard a consistent message emanating from the United States, emanating from other countries in the region, emanating from the UN Security Council. Of course, the conflict in Ethiopia predates this administration. Unfortunately, it was last week that we marked a somber milestone. 1 full year of violence in Tigray. And since the earliest days of this administration, President Biden, Secretary Blinken have prioritized our diplomacy to find a way out of this violence. It has involved not only the special envoy, but Secretary Blinken in his repeated engagements, the National Security Advisor, Deputy Secretary Wendy Sherman, Assistant Secretary Fee, all of them have been very much engaged in this. We have held, and Special Envoy Feltman, in his 7 or so months on the job, has held over 300 engagements with the AU, with the UN, with the EU, with regional neighbors as well. This diplomacy has been concerted. It has been intense. If you just look at the schedule that Ambassador Feltman has maintained over the past few days, where he has shuttled back and forth between Ethiopia and Kenya. As I mentioned before, as of today, he is now back in Ethiopia. He is back in Addis. We will have more to read out when his trip concludes, or at least this chapter of his trip concludes. As we've made clear last week on November 4th, he met in Ethiopia with a number of Ethiopian officials and regional officials. He met with African Union Commission Chairperson Musa Faki. He met with Ethiopian Minister of Defense Bole, Minister of Finance Ahmed Shide, Deputy Prime Minister Hassan. He met with Prime Minister Abe the following day on November 5th. And over the weekend, he met with President Kenyatta in Nairobi to consult on Ethiopia. As we've said, we certainly value the leadership that President Kenyatta has demonstrated, and we appreciate the constructive visit that Special Envoy Feltman had to Nairobi, from where he has just traveled back to Addis. When it comes to the TPLF, we have engaged with the TPLF as well. We are engaging with the parties to try and put them on a path to a cessation of hostilities, which is our priority now and going forward.